Hi guys, I want to start off with the passage that took the blindfold off of what the years of education has come to a very restrictive belief of what metaphor is. And the authors of Metaphors We Live By in a passage say that metaphors is typically viewed as a characteristic of language alone, a matter of words rather than thought or action. And just like many, I was one to believe that metaphor was one of the many forms of figurative language. And because of this, I didn't really know that we actually use metaphors in our everyday lives, and that they actually influence our thoughts and actions. And the writers of the authors of Metaphors We Live By actually tell us that metaphors are not only one of many forms of figurative language, but they actually play a big part in the way that we think and act in our everyday lives. And they explain this in great details with a few of the most common phrases during our time period, how these phrases are constructed through the relationship that we make in times where a certain lifestyle is lived. One of these examples is time is money. The authors explain that the conditions of living, the culture that is experienced, influences how we think, and because of that, act as well. In a society where our lives are structured to meet goals or tasks at a certain time period, this limits us to having much control of what we want to do during that time. Living in a time where the world evolves through the labor that creates money. Living in times where you are paid hourly in a job, we view our services and things that we do for other people as an act of labor that are done for a reward. This is because everything we do has a value. This world runs with money. Otherwise, it would be seen or it would be motionless. And since actions are performed at a certain deadline, money or reward will be earned from that labor, creating our wisdom to not waste time and use the time you have to make actions that will benefit you in the end, which also creates a connection between time and the actions that you take, since a reward is the end result expected once finishing an action. Many would say that is the relationship between a job and the check earned. Having a connection already formed between labor done at an employment and the money earned from the job done by the hour, it makes the action you do during a time period of the time be the service and that certain work that you have to get done. Which is why when the authors of Metaphors We Live By mentioned that all the activities that you do in paying your debt to society, serving time, is very significant because it amplifies how society, we are very restricted in choosing what we can do in the time we have, because due to all the activities that we choose to do, we have to pay that bill. Since this world and the society of today's time is run through the creation of money and the consistent reformation of money. And this actually didn't really connect to me until Christopher mentioned it. And something else that I found really interesting was that a passage that says the very systemacy that allows us to comprehend one aspect of a concept in terms of another will necessarily hide other aspects of the concept. And which Professor Barnes also explained this to us, but also the others as well. That depending on the words used in a certain concept, that concept is actually what creates meaning behind the words that are being used. So because there's so much usage to a word, how that phrase could be interpreted depends on the concept that is used in. Hence why in this quote it says that when you only understand, or you only view or interpret one form of how a term or a concept is being used, it doesn't allow you to see the other aspects or ideas or concept or meaning behind the other concepts that it could be used in those words. And that is very interesting to me, because I didn't realize how the creation of meaning is actually through the concept instead of the words. Usually, throughout analysis, I've always thought that diction, defining the words that are being used, is actually how we find the meaning. But really, it's how those words are being used is what actually creates that meaning. So that forms a clarity on what idea is actually being brought out. Another thing that I found very interesting was the apple juice seed, and how that scenario of the apple juice seed would not be comprehensible if you have written it down. If someone has written, go sit in that apple juice seed, someone who would only be reading those words, it wouldn't make any sense to them, because what is apple juice seed? So the fact that if that sentence were to be used in another context, and actually being in a kitchen room where there's a dining table and the seats, 5 of them have orange juice and only one contains an apple juice on where that seat is placed, and actually seeing it in that perspective, you know that is where you're supposed to be seated. And it's actually very interesting how context or concept plays a huge role in significance of what is being told. And so yeah, that's it.